Hello Steelers, and welcome to this review of At the Sharp End 2. This is the campaign supplement for Chain of Command 2. It has only just been released about a week or so ago as I record this. I've been waiting for my hard copy to come through. This I got printed at Docs Direct. It is currently as a PDF on the Too Fat Lardies website, so you can get it right away and download it. I think it's about, I can't remember, it's about 15 quid I think, something like that. But go and check it out anyway. But yeah, it's only in PDF for the moment, but obviously I've printed mine out because I like to have hard copies of things because they're just a little bit easier to use, at least for me anyway. So what I thought I'd do in this video is kind of just have a quick look through it. I just want to point out some of the things that you're going to find in this, and as I say, this is a campaign supplement largely for Chain of Command 2. However, I'm going to say here and now, this can be used for pretty much any other low-level Second World War war game, because the principles that are described in here will fit with pretty much any other war game that you can play. You know, so let's say, for example, bolt action. So if you wanted to use that, you use this in conjunction with bolt action, you quite easily could, for creating your own campaigns. And it's basically a resource for creating campaigns, but it is also a supplement for the pint-sized campaigns that the Too Fat Lardies produce. And it is well worth getting if you are playing any of the pint-sized campaigns, simply because the pint-sized campaigns really lift Chain of Command 2 out of what is a brilliant game into an exemplary game, and this really helps. I've had At the Sharp End version 1 for a good few years. I've used it in lots of campaigns that both myself and Dex have played, and also ones I played solo as well. And it's a really nice resource, as I say, for just basically ushering you through those campaigns, what happens to your figures at the end of the game, and how they readdress their damage towards into the next campaign turn and things like that. But as I say, what we'll do is we'll dive straight into it. We'll have a look through it. I'll show you kind of the stuff that's changed from the original version. And as I say, you can probably still use the original version of At the Sharp End with your pint-sized campaigns. But At the Sharp End 2 actually adds in quite a lot of new stuff. So it's well worth getting just for that. You know, it's been reassessed over these past few years, and basically Rich has just jammed in a few extra bits and pieces as well, so kind of bring it up to date with Chain of Command 2. So let's have a quick look at what is in the book. So as you can see, there's the cover. British fella blasting away with his old Bren gun, giving it a bit of umpty there on the front. It's a really nice cover, actually. It looks really good. And you also get that as it goes into the book itself as well. So lots of lovely photographs of lots of nice figures, lovely painted figures all the way through. Really nicely laid out, as looks very similar to Chain of Command 2, so it's got that real nice feel of it, pretty much like Chain of Command 2. So as I say, this kind of brings it up completely up to the same standard and same level as Chain of Command 2. 56 pages in total, all the way through, including the fronts as well, I think. Yeah, including the fronts. So really, just over 50 pages of content in here, and all really well thought out. And of course you've got your contents. So basically we have an introduction telling us what a pint-sized campaign is, how it works in the Chain of Command 2 world basically, and then also part 1 here covers how you play a pint-sized campaign. Just basically your steps that you will go through when you're playing these games, and they are well worth buying because they are pretty cheap, and they certainly give you a massive amount of gaming opportunity in them, so they're worthwhile looking at. And as I say, this is really a supplement for that as well. Then part 2 is all about how to actually design your own pint-sized campaign as well. And then there is also a sneaky little pint-sized campaign in the end of it as well, which didn't exist in At the Sharp End part 1. And another thing as well, this is Appendix 1, Fielding Reduced Strength Platoons. We're going to come back to that because this is very important and a massive step up from the previous games, and something that will really help out any pick up and play Chain of Command games that you might want to be playing. So let's have a quick look. As I say, a lot of this stuff was already in At the Sharp End, such as how to play the pint-sized campaigns, and also a little bit about designing it as well. But they've just kind of been extracted on a little bit, expanded on a little bit over the time. So let's just have a quick go through. Describes obviously what a pint-sized campaign is. There are tons you can find on the Too Fat Lardies website. There are loads more in the Lardies specials. There's loads more that have been fan made as well. There are tons and tons and tons of these, and it is something that Richard keeps producing over time, so there is always going to be new ones coming out for across the entire basically across the entire the World War II basically. So it's really nice that, you know, these things are available and they're just worth playing. As I say, it really picks it up. Then we go into explaining how a pint-sized campaign works. And this is one of the interesting things as well. This is about creating new your characters. So for your leaders, you can now start to give, well, you could anyway in the original at the sharp end, but this is something that just adds something to a game if you haven't done it before. Basically, you create a character, you create their background, you give them the age, their physical traits and their names. What has been added in here, in the previous one, we already had the UK, the USA, Germany, USSR, and but now we've got Japan added in there as well, because there are obviously going to be some, because of the Far East handbook. What I wanted to note here as well is some people will understand this, but our map here, number 4, shows that Sheffield is very clearly in the north. Just saying. So we've got an attachment now with Japan, as well as obviously with the USSR, the USA, the UK and Germany. So basically you can work out where your characters are coming from, and then we also have their backgrounds as well. So you basically roll a couple of dice, add them up, and then it tells you basically a little bit of background about each of your leaders. Now this may seem a little bit strange for you, and again here we've got officers and NCOs for each of these 5 major forces now. You've got 5 nations for whom you can pull out these leaders, and as I say, the addition here, the nice addition that I'm quite pleased with, is the Japanese over here. We then add up, we give them an age, then we also have some particular physical traits as well. This has slightly changed from the original at the sharp end. This is a little less involved than it was before, but it has kind of just basically given you some nice traits. So for most of them there's going to be no effect, but potentially you've got crack shot, so they can shoot as a sniper. 10 to 11 is a brawler, so they add additional combat dice, or 12 is an inspiring leader. So what does that do in the game? It just means that these leaders are just that little bit better than everybody else, which is really nice, and it just adds, just adds that little bit of difference to everybody's leaders. They're not all just a junior leader or a senior leader. They now have a couple of physical traits. You can also, if you want to, you can roll up roll the dice and get a name. You can work out, a name from just finding something online, or you can actually just do it through the generator here. Now, this is a weird thing. Like you're thinking about, well, what's all this about? Why does this matter? This is it's just extra fluff. Arguably, yes, it is. However, the thing is, when you've got these characters, and this is something that I've noticed in campaigns before, those little leaders, those little plastic figures, those little metal figures that are on the table, if they've got a name, if you know what their background is, if you know what their physical traits are, if you know all these little bits and pieces about them, they start to create their own narrative within the game and within the campaign, because you're not just playing a single game with them. You're taking them through, maybe 4, 5, 6, even more games of Chain of Command with these particular leaders who are there. They're starting to build their own stories of the things that they're doing in the games, and it adds so much flesh to these little fellas that I can't tell you. It seems like it's such a weird thing to think about and a weird thing to put into a game, but it really, really works. It's almost like a role-playing game in that you are starting to care about these characters as they go through their career, their military career, even just if it's only for a couple of weeks in a pint-sized campaign. And it's well worth doing. It's well worth sitting down for 10 minutes, half an hour, just working out what your leaders are called and adding them to your roster and things. So this is a really nice touch. Again, this is in sharp practice at the sharp end one anyway, so if you've already used that, you will be used to this. As I say, slight differences here and there in things Japanese are added in, that kind of stuff. Then we go on to actually how you play the campaign as well. So this is kind of like the instructions for using a pint-sized campaign. You can, you know, a lot of this is probably pretty familiar to people who have done these. And again, this is at the sharp end. Anyway, so this is just kind of like the a few extra bits and pieces in here that have been added in. Stuff like the Blitzkrieg Gambit are in there as well. And just what happens to you after during the game, at the end of the game, basically how a unit is knackered, what happens to your casualties, how many of these guys will come back, and how many will go into action again, how many are actually killed. So basically, it's however many figures are killed in the game gives you how many are actually dead, how many miss a turn, and how many are returned to duty. So this is where you're doing your maths at the end of the game, and it doesn't take very long. There's very minimal paperwork when it comes to doing a pint-sized campaign at the end of each of these, and this really obviously speeds everything up. I just also want to mention as well, we've got things like this as well. We've got these warning orders from Hugh Jarch. He makes an appearance again from Chain of Command 2, just to talk about, you know, why these things are in here. It's like designer's notes scattered throughout the document itself, and also in action is basically an example of these things and how you do it. So it's all there, it's all laid out for you. It's very nice, very easy. I mentioned as well, you know, these individual characters, now that they have names, and well, you know, they have names, they have traits, they have ages, they have a place they're from, their background. The opinions of the men on the CO will change over time. Not only the men's opinions on the platoon commander, but also the CO's opinion on the platoon commander as well. And this is, you basically go down these lists here, and it tells you if your opinion goes up or down. As your opinion of the CO goes up or down, you might get extra re-rolls for supports. As your men's opinion goes down, your force morale will start to drop, for example. But you also might get some medals as well. And there are plenty of medals. We also have a platoon leader's outlook as well, which over the course of a campaign might change quite a lot, just because they might start out quite happy and cheerful, but you might end up at merciless, you might end up at stupefied, and you really move around. It's a really nice little system here that, again, just adds that flesh to those plastic and metal figures that you don't normally have. There's just one thing I want to mention here as well in casualties. In the old version, you could have an extra section in your platoon and then basically use that as a meat shield to absorb all the casualties you would take for calculating how many units, how many men come back in the next one. Now that has changed, and your support units are also part of the calculation for how many men come back in off this chart here. So, you know, if you had a section of 10 men wiped out previously, and it was a support section, it wouldn't have affected the number of figures. Now, if you have those 10 men wiped out, you automatically start with 10 figures killed. So you are then automatically going into your base platoon as well. So it just means that you can't throw out your support sections just to take that punishment before, you know, anybody else takes any hits, and then, you know, try to keep your core platoon as intact as possible in the game. So yeah, it's quite a nice little. It's a very small, subtle shift, but it is something that just will really change people's use of support sections in the game. So then we get into designing the pint-sized campaigns, and this is something you can do for yourself. This is something you could, you know, possibly put these out online if you're interested in it. But it basically just describes the different types of campaigns that do exist, or gives you a pretty basic idea of how to go about this, really. And the steps of these are all in here as well. So it again has a little bit of an example here using the old one originally, talking about using original maps from the time and how big the Chain of Command board is, you know, a Wargaming board is on those maps, and then just designing the ladder campaigns, for example, or other kinds of campaigns where they may split off, for example, and just identifying the different scenarios throughout it here, with, once again, some really nice examples of just where, you know, forces are going to be fighting. So you know, security area is going to be lightly held. It might be a probe scenario. Main battle area would be the bit where you're going to get heavier forces behind, and then in the rear area it's kind of the breakout area as well. So you're kind of thinking about this in where your maps are going to be, or where your boards are going to be laid out, and where each ladder on that campaign is going to take place. And again, just a really good design instructions here of how to play. How to design a campaign in and of itself for your own interest, if nothing else. Talking about, you know, the different kinds of scenery that you would expect to see on there, and just see, you know, the kind of stuff using modern aerial photography, and also Second World War aerial photography as well, just to, you know, get an idea of the kind of thing that is laid around in those grounds and what you would expect to find on your wargaming table as well. Then, of course, it just adds in some of the basic stuff, you know, allocating your core forces, what support options you're going to have, anything that you would want to put in there. For example, here is a Jitra campaign. This is an interesting one because you can either choose to go the long way down the table or the short way down the table by waiting a campaign term. And this is something you know, as a Japanese attacker, it's something that is I've not seen previously in other Chain of Command pie-sized campaigns. So this is nice to see it demonstrated here and how it works as well, and a bit of pretty much designer's notes sitting behind it as well. And as I said, I mentioned that we also have a little bit of a sneaky pint-sized campaign in here as well. So we've got this, it's test case. So this basically just talks about, you know, the taking all those examples and just basically putting them together into how to build a pint-sized campaign. And here we have one, a 5-step rung ladder campaign, with the different missions in there showing you how to do it. And then on top of that, we also have support lists as well for your forces. So you can basically have a British force against a German force, and you've got your support forces already there. So as I say, there's a very basic Chain of Command pint-sized campaign to start playing in there if you want. And the map here is very, very clear, pretty much, to show you exactly how you could lay out these tables. You know, you could pretty much easily lay these out without even having to have a full colour map of those, because it is a very nice, clear map of the area, a historic map as well. So that's really nice. It's just a really nice little addition into this. So if nothing else, you're getting a pint-sized campaign out of this book as well. Now, this is one of the other things that is being added in here that is really probably worth your while buying this book if you're never going to play any pie-sized campaigns. And this is fielding reduced strength platoons. This is a completely new, fresh section that has come up. So for example, you're playing a pickup game of Chain of Command. You have your core platoon, but you want it as though it is part of a campaign. So what you're doing is you are basically it's going to take some damage in a previous game or a previous engagement. Some men may have fallen sick, you know, all these kind of things, because most platoons aren't up to full scratch anyway whenever they're fighting for various reasons, especially in an ongoing campaign. So now what you do is you roll a hand of dice, a bit like your command dice, and then you take those dice and you put them into the different sections, the platoon headquarters, and also the leaders as well, and you choose which dice go into these. And what happens is these will then reduce some of those assets within your thing. So let me have a look. So for example, here, the USSR, if we rolled a 3, we can choose to put in our first section, and we will then reduce by 3 figures that section, only 1 team, but with no LMG. So that's quite a battered section. But then that's used up a 3, but then we might have, you know, another 1, and we go, right, okay, well, we don't want to lose our inferior senior leader. We don't want senior leaders to become inferior, so let's just make our 3rd section absent. And you basically put down these dice. They have to roll add up to a certain number just to make the maths work. But basically, you allocate your dice on the 5 different assets within, or the different aspects within your platoon, and basically it reduces them. So the more 5s and 6s you roll, you're going to get more full sections, or, you know, better senior leaders, etc., etc. So that's a really, really nice way of just doing this. And again, it goes all the way through. He's got British, German, USSR, United States, and the Japanese as well. And also just shows you exactly how this works. And this is a brilliant piece of rules addition into Chain of Command, just to make your pickup games very different to any other games that you're normally playing. Just, you know, you can literally turn up 6 dice and then find out that, you know, half of your platoon might not have turned up, or some of them are missing and stuff. Because some of us, we like asymmetric games. And then finally, the last thing is just some of these key resources as well, which is really nice. Just a list here of just bits and pieces of things that you can go looking for. So maps for a lot of these things. So we've got some from Canada, Texas, Australia. We've also got the Battlefield Historian. I think he produces or sells maps, Second World War maps at various scales. And then some of the other stuff as well, like this 15th Scottish Division, if you want to look at their maps. And this is literally just a jumping off point for people to, to look into their own things as well. So there is a huge amount packed into this 56 pages as far as I'm concerned, and this I think is worth every penny, not only because it just adds so much more to any campaign of Chain of Command that you want to play, but it also just adds those extra bits like the depleted platoons. Also just how to basically research a campaign in and of itself from a historical point of view, and also how to create your own. Well, Steelers, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do give me a like, leave a comment. Let me know if you've already bought this or if you're intending on buying this. And as always, please do hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next Storm of Steel video.